Hi, I'm Dan Schmitt. I do a motorcycle racing TV show, Team Chicago Challenge. My email is teamdan45@gmail.com. My website is teamchicago.tv, and I love to hear from my audience. So my regular weekly TV show, we've now reached almost 1,600 TV shows. So for show number 1599, we're going to look at what took place in the past and how I got into racing, because in 2000 there was barely no racing because of the Chinese plague. So lucky for me, I have 3 lovely granddaughters, and they all agreed to sit down, work through my photo albums, and we're going to look at how I got into motorcycle racing, how I created Team Chicago, and how I got into motorcycle road racing then. So don't forget my email, teamdan45@gmail.com. I love to hear from my audience, and let me know what you think of these clips that I'm putting up on YouTube. So Taylor, thanks for coming on the show. I know you're kind of busy with kids now. God, how can you get so old on me? So what's your first question for me about motorcycling?
Well, how'd you get into motorcycle racing at first?
Well, to get into motorcycle, let's talk about that first. My family is not a motorcycle family per se, but the first person to own a two-wheel vehicle was my brother Bob, and I think I have a picture of Bob on his Vespa. So back then in Illinois, in the late 1950s, you could get a license for a two-wheel vehicle if it was under 5 horsepower at 14. So that's how we were into two-wheel. Now my dad never rode motorcycles. My dad was not a motorcycle type person, but he did love automobiles. My dad, without a doubt, was, I mean, he did his own work on his car, and he was a car guy, you know, and he loved to drive. So that's one thing why when we would go to the races, I mean, we literally, you and I, going to Summit Point, which is 800 miles away, we would do that in 16 hours.
Right.
I mean, straight through. And still, here's a good story. But then when I was working, I drove the coffee truck starting in high school, and then I bought my Triumph motorcycle. But I might have already been married when I bought my Triumph, so I bought a 650 Triumph Bonneville, and that would have been 1969. And when your mom was just a baby. And then, all right, so now I'm going to get into how I got into racing.
Okay.
I mean, it's another great story. The guys from Ace Cycle World, and Ace Cycle World was on Western Avenue, right by Montrose, 4300 Western, the largest motorcycle dealer in Chicago at that time. And the guys from Ace Cycle World, the mechanics and all that, but even the salesmen, you know, Billy Von Esser and Hud. Hud was the big gang leader in the back and one of the mechanics. They went to Santa Fe Speedway every Wednesday night. So they would say, why don't you come to Santa Fe Speedway? So the only exposure I had to that point of motorcycles and racing was the guys in the neighborhood. We went to the drag strip one time. If you go to a drag strip with a motorcycle, you are treated like a third-rate citizen.
Oh, jeez.
They'll make you sit on the side. You don't even get to go down the strip until you get 10 or 8 together, and then they may allow you to run down the strip. But you're treated badly at the drag strip. And I can still remember to this day, walking in, you walked in the front gate of Santa Fe Speedway, the beer concession stand was here, the grandstands was up here, and the track was straight ahead. And I went to the fence, and I looked at the racing, and I went, man, I want to do this. I thought it was the coolest thing I ever seen in my life. And that was professional racing.
Right.
So you couldn't just race the Santa Fe Speedway. So I went, even that day, that first time I was at Santa Fe, I went up to the announcer's booth, who happened to be Jan Gabriel, who happened to be a good friend of mine, the late, great Jan Gabriel. And I asked him, how do you get the races at Santa Fe Speedway? And he basically said, well, you got to have a professional license. And in order to get a professional license, you have to race for 2 years. You have to accumulate points, or you have to show that you have experience for,
Wow, I didn't know that.
yeah, for 2 years. So lucky for me, I'm driving a coffee truck. This is when I was also Coffee Dan. So that's the other thing I'm pretty proud of, being Coffee Dan. Joe Scarlatta was also driving a coffee truck. He picked up a 250 OSA, and he wanted to go race motorcycles. So Joe had the OSA, and we would go to Sycamore Speedway. And they would run like Saturday nights motorcycle racing. And Joe bet me $10 that I wouldn't race that year. That was 1970. So by the end of he bet me $10. So by the end of the year, the last race at Sycamore Speedway, which would have been end of August probably, I took the headlight off my Triumph and the taillight, made number plates, got the trailer from HUD, tied the bike on there with ropes, didn't even have straps, you know, tying ropes around, hoping it doesn't fall off the trailer. And I raced my first race at Sycamore Speedway. And I won $10 from Joe. I didn't win any money at the race because I was dead last. But I did win Joe gave me $10.
Very nice.
The next week was Millburg Speedway had a race. So I went to Millburg Speedway and I raced there. So that was my first season, was only 2 races.
Okay.
To get ready for the next year, now if you look through the pictures, flip through the couple pictures. There's my Triumph sitting in the garage there. And go to the next, and here's my Triumph. Here's another picture of my Triumph. So it was just basically, there's my Triumph. After I painted the gas tank, I found a gas tank from a BSA. And seat was like a road race seat that I picked up. Some of these pictures were taken by my friend Jesse Hernandez. And some of these pictures were taken by Tom Yunker, my friend, came out. And Tom Yunker also filmed a race. I had an 8mm camera, and he did a great job, and that's what we're going to show right now. Film from 1971, Millburg Speedway, and Tom Yunker showing me, or showing a race that I was in.
Very nice.
So let's check that out right now. My good friend, the late great Tom Yunker, was standing on top of my Dodge van. There was my little brother Joey helping me adjust the clutch as I head on over to the start-finish line. It is Jerry Scheffler who was the starter, and Ken, his younger brother, did the staging. So they have a conversation. Jerry gets back into the circle and gets ready to start this race. I am on the inside, running second place, and then I let off the gas a little bit, going through turn 3 and 4, and I'm running in third place. So this probably would have been in July or August. I do not have the names of the other racers in this race, but we were running the B class, Open B. But this is how you learned how to race. If you wanted to race motorcycles, you went to amateur racing to learn how to race. And I should point out that my Triumph is just, as you can see, hundreds of people came out to the races. There was a class for everybody. 85 cc's, 125, 100s, 250, a little slow motion here, 400s, and then the open class.
of the two racetracks back then, Millburg Speedway and Sycamore Speedway, I did like Millburg a little bit better, but it was 100 miles to drive to Millburg, where Sycamore was only about 50 miles.
During that year, 1971, I ran Millburg. Millburg ran every other weekend. So I probably ran Millburg 8 times, and that was TT racing on Sunday. Once in a while, they would let us run on the short track, and I did run the short track. Be part of Santa Fe. I mean, it was definitely what made professional racing. Picture there and turn, but because it was also set up, I could run TT. So that's a TT, because at Santa Fe Speedway, they had a kidney shape. So you went around the oval and then you would go into the infield and they had a jump. So there's a picture of me going over the jump. And you can see on that picture, I have a front wheel that's got a brake on it. Compared to this picture, when I'm short tracking, there's no front brake. So that was becoming part of the world of professional racing. And at Santa Fe Speedway, there'd be 100 riders would show up. Everybody had to qualify. So you would run one lap against the clock, and then the fastest, either the fastest 24 or the fastest 32 made the real program.
Oh, really?
Then the next 60 would make the B program. So the A program would be either 3 heats of 8 or 4 heats of 8, then 2 semis, and then a final. The B program would be 6 heats of 10. First 2 out of each heat would make a 12-man B final. If you won the B final, you won $40. If you won the A final, and you won the trophy dash and all that, if you were if you were the top qualifiers, you could have made like $165 or $200. Then we get into 1977. 1977 is when Team Chicago was created. So my concept, you're going to see these different covers and artwork. This is stuff that Jesse Hernandez did for me. My concept was, I raced at Norville Downs in 1976, maybe 75 too. Staten Lorenz was the promoter up there, ran a team race. What he did, he took the fastest 5 riders from Michigan and the fastest 5 riders from the rest of the country. He put up another purse, and he had a 10-lap race at Norville Downs. The spectators loved it. They were cheering on, that Jay Springsteen was only a junior maybe then, but he's running with the experts, Corky Keener, Jay Springsteen, Rex Beauchamp, whoever from Michigan, they won. And people were thrilled. Well, at this time I was getting to be friends with Howard Teat, who ran Santa Fe Speedway. And I suggested to him the concept of a team race every week. And the idea was I would put Team Chicago together, and the fastest 5 of us would take on the fastest 5 from Michigan one week, the fastest 5 from Wisconsin one week, the fastest 5 from Illinois, the rest of Illinois, Indiana, and then when the National came to town, we would take on Team USA. And that'd be the fastest 5 from anywhere. So keep going on. So these are more artwork. This is all Jesse Hernandez putting this artwork together. So thank him for doing this kind of artwork. This is before computers. At least nobody had computers. This is, all right, so keep going. And then I put this program together, and here's all the guys on Team Chicago in 1977. Now, that one picture is from Santa Fe Speedway. We got everybody together, and Jesse took the picture. And then the other picture is from my backyard on Kilpatrick. So I did a regular program that we handed out. back then. So you can flip the page, and there's some pictures from '77. So there's Jimmy Collins and me. And the one thing I did is I had t-shirts done. So Team Chicago wore white t-shirts over the leathers. They had red ones for Michigan, black ones for Illinois, blue for Wisconsin, and so they would, and we would have a separate race. The 10-lap race, we would stagger start. The slowest guy starting in front, the fastest guys in back, and it'd be 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, and run a 10-lap race. I think Howard came up with $300 or maybe $200, whatever. I think the winning team got $25 a man, and the losing team got $15 a man. So it was worthwhile to participate. And now you can see different. The Tribune came out, did a story that's behind my coffee truck. See the changer? I got my changer. So I did all the promotion too. So I was more than just, I mean, I was the guy at the track organizing who was going to run the race. At the end of the night, I would make sure the results got into the Tribune and the Sun-Times, so it would be in the newspaper the next day. And then the Tribune there's my article in the Tribune, a couple articles in the Sun-Times. So my whole concept was to get more publicity for the motorcycle racing.
Right.
And that's how we would build a greater fan base. I mean, I got into racing in 1970. Motorcycle racing at that time was probably at its pinnacle. I mean, as far as people participating. I'm talking about dirt tracking in the 70s. Then I got into road racing in 1980. But I was still dirt tracking also. I mean, being in Chicago was like the center of motorcycle racing. I mean, even with road racing, you could be in Chicago and there was 7 racetracks within 350 miles of Chicago. Dirt track racing, especially with when there was many fairs, I could make 2 races on a weekend, not drive more than 200 miles. I mean, that's how much racing there was. There was hundreds of races, and there was thousands of people racing motorcycles. So we're going to continue on. We're starting in 1982 or so, and I'm with my granddaughter, Heather. Now, Heather is my daughter's daughter, Bridget, and I think to go through this, I mean, they have some interest in what went on in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, and it's a great history. First of all, Mike Calvert. I didn't mention Mike Calvert's name at all. When I started racing, I lived on Sawyer Avenue by Berthoud in Chicago. Mike Calvert lived across the street. He was a 14-year-old kid, and he wanted to hang around the garage. Well, back then, I had a 2-car garage I was renting. I rented the whole garage. In fact, I heated the garage. I ran a gas pipe out there. But I also had the coffee truck, took 1 stall in the garage. The coffee truck had to be in the garage. That's how I brought the truck home. I only had the other half of the garage for the motorcycles, and I had the 1 Triumph, and I ended up having another Triumph when I got into racing. So Mike Calvert was very important. And as we get into the 80s, Mike Calvert was still a big part of my racing. So Mike Calvert, I forgot to mention you in the first go around. I'm going to send you a copy of these shows, but I want to thank you because you introduced me to Jimmy Rashid. Jimmy Rashid was also a 14-year-old kid, probably the best mechanic I've ever known. Even when he was 14, he was a great mechanic. His dad had a gas station repair shop at Mozart and Irving Park, and I was friends with his brother, Rabbi, and he was another person that helped me quite a bit. I mean, you got to figure out, you can't race motorcycles if you can't do the mechanics. Okay, I'll tell the whole 4 and 6 story. Joe, that owned Pete's Pizza, was the son of the owner, Pete's Pizza, and his brother-in-law, and they opened up a shop on Elston Avenue by Drake. But anyhow, he was a tuck pointer also, and he split. Left Joe's sister high and dry and went to Texas. So now Joe's holding the bag of this motorcycle shop, and he's running a pizza place. So he asked Jim Rashid to join him at 4 and 6. But anyhow, Jimmy became full partner with Joe at 4 and 6. Jimmy also had the Seika. So there's a picture of the Seika.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to go drag racing. We went to the drag strip twice. We're treated like crap at the drag strip. I think I told that story before. I went down the strip. He had wheelie bars, maybe 11 seconds, 10 seconds. I said, Jimmy, this is terrible. We need to go road race this bike. I'm the one that turned Jimmy to look at road race. I mean, 4 and 6 cycle in the 2000s was the premier motorcycle road race shop in the nation. The greatest, the best. They had the best equipment. They had everything. There was not anything that 4 and 6 could not do. So you're looking at that picture of the Seika. I raced that bike. There's a picture from Indianapolis Raceway Park. I'm going to show you the video that Mike Calvert shot, the film. Mike probably took that picture. Mike also shot the film. So I'm going to show you that film right now of me racing at Indianapolis Raceway Park.
As we line up on the front straightaway, as you can see, this Yamaha comes off the line very fast. A 750 Yamaha Seika 4-cylinder. And on the first lap, I am running, it looks like 5th or 6th place. Jim Rashid built a very fast motor, this 750 Seika, but it did have a drawback. It did have a shaft drive. Yamaha was not interested in racing this model. It was basically Jim Rashid, Ed Hilton, Mike Calvert, and I were building Yamaha's first superbike. This film was shot by my good friend, Mike Calvert. Mike Calvert also shot that picture. As I run through the carousel at IRP, Indianapolis Raceway Park, under the grandstands and down the drag strip. But at this point, I was learning how to road race. We were learning how to make this bike go around the racetrack properly. As you can see, the bike was pretty fast. This was probably a GTO race. It was a race that ran on Saturday. It'd be 1 hour long. This is for bikes open class up to 1,000 cc's. As I'm catching up now with Buzz Pritz, the president of WERA, the person that got me into road racing, my good friend Buzz Pritz on his 4-cylinder Honda.
So Grandpa, it looks like you're road racing here. So at that point, were you still dirt tracking?
Yeah, see, that's it. I'm one of the guys that tried to do everything. So I would still run Santa Fe Speedway. Santa Fe Speedway was still professional racing.
Right.
And I felt at that time my future would have been better road racing.
Right.
Okay, so let's turn the page. And there was another picture of me racing Santa Fe. Was that 82?
Yep. Yeah,
Right.
82.
So I'm just racing I think that's probably Paul Rembus. So Paul Rembus is hanging out. He also was dirt tracking. Paul Rembus was greatly involved with the ice racing, setting up the track at Mineola. He had friends. He was living in Zonia, Wisconsin at that time. He had local kids that were hanging out. They would come down and help set up the track. Can't forget Al Bloom. Linda Bloom would help him with the track at Mineola. So I had all kinds of people helping me.
Yes, there's been many people involved with my racing going all the way back to 1970. And my 3 lovely granddaughters that helped me produce 21 TV shows. For more information on we're America's road race leader, it's WERA.com. For the AMA and dirt track racing, it's AmericanMotorcyclist.com. To contact me, it's teamdan45@gmail.com. I love to hear from my audience. And remember, you can always search on YouTube with Dan Schmitt Motorcycle Racing for great motorcycle racing action, Dan Schmitt Politics, to learn what makes America great. And I highly encourage you to visit the World of Motorcycle Museum, Winamac, Indiana, just off Indiana 39, 4 miles south of North Judson. Give them a call first at 574-896-3172. It's a great trip and a great collection of motorcycles.